Are we live? Right on. Well, aloha everyone, and thank you for joining today. Pretty excited for this little program we got for you today. We're just keeping it pretty casual and talking story a little bit about our upcoming field mission to Papahānaumokuākea to remove marine debris. And so today, as you can see, we have an expert panel of folks that are going to be chiming in today on various topics. And so I'll just really quickly introduce them and we'll go from there. So first of all, I'm Kevin O'Brien. I'm the president and founder of the Papahānaumokuākea Marine Debris Project, which is an NGO that we've formed to be able to spearhead marine debris cleanup efforts within Papahānaumokuākea, which is the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. On my left here, we have Ali Bolus. She helps to run outreach for PMDP, and also her day job is with NOAA Fisheries. We have Ivan Vicente, and he works for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, doing a lot of outreach content for Fish and Wildlife, and he's actually going to join us on this field mission, so he'll be part of the field team. We have a couple people on board today that are going to be part of the field team. Down there we have Jenna Carr, who is with the Hawaii Pacific University Center for Marine Debris Research. And then we have Michelle Smith, who's with the State of Hawaii Department of Land and Natural Resources, Division of Forestry and Wildlife, with the Kure Atoll Field Camp. We have Drew McWhorter, who's also with the Hawaii Pacific University Center for Marine Debris Research. And we have Matt Saunter, who is joining us on this mission via our organization, PMDP, but he's previously worked for many years for the state of Hawaii at Kure Atoll. And then last but not least, we have Kalani Kiocho, and he's a Native Hawaiian Program Specialist for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Office of National Marine Sanctuaries for Papahānaumokuākea Marine National Monument. So we have a lot of good expertise here, and so we're gonna go ahead and have a Q&A session at the end, and so anybody in this group here can answer questions at the end. So if you have any questions, please input those into the YouTube live chat, and Ali will moderate the questions in the chat. So anyway, welcome. I hope there's some students tuning in, and also just people from the general public. We're really excited to share with you Papahānaumokuākea and what we're doing to protect it. So let me just start. All right. Welcome to our talk story. So we're going to be covering a bit about our upcoming cleanup mission. We're leaving here in a couple of days on the 30th to head up into Papahānaumokuākea to conduct shoreline cleanups at 6 different locations. So we're going to be gone for 25 days. We've got a crew of 12 people, and we're all in it together. It's very much a collaborative project. So as you can see, here's probably the most boring slide in this whole thing. But as you can see, it takes a village to make this work happen. And so if you aren't familiar with Papahānaumokuākea Marine National Monument, it stretches for almost 1,300 miles. Stretches for almost 1,300 miles from Honolulu. And so it's very remote. It's very difficult to get to. And it's very expensive, and so it takes a lot of resources. So our role with PMDP is to really try and pull in support from the federal and state agencies that manage this really incredible area, and also to rally support amongst the public, the people of Hawaii, and elsewhere in the world for this really, really incredible area, and doing what we can to take care of it. So as you can see, there are a lot of players. This particular project is made up of people from all different organizations. So we have 4 folks coming from PMDP. We have 3 folks coming along from NOAA. We have 3 folks coming along from the state of Hawaii. We have 1 coming from Fish and Wildlife Service, and 1 from Hawaii Pacific University. So These missions are collaborative, and it's our goal to be able to lead these missions and make them happen every year. So if you want to follow along, you can do so by visiting our website, and Ali will talk a little bit more at the end about the outreach and social media content that we have planned. But we're going to have a live story map on our website there at the link you can see that will update every day with updates from the field team that's out there on the ship and on the islands. And you'll be able to follow along with us as we go. Also follow us on social media at PMDP Hawaii. You can also follow along with any of the project partners, with the NOAA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, HPU, etc. Social medias, and they will also have some content. So, you know, what I really wanted to talk about today is not so much the issue of marine debris. Like that is very important, and that is a really hotbed issue in the Pacific. But for those of us that do this work, this work is actually about a place rather than an issue. And so I really wanted to highlight to you guys this amazing place. And it's always really interesting talking with people during the course of our outreach, and just always surprising how many people aren't actually all that familiar with Papahānaumokuākea, or the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands as they were called prior to 2006. And I think that's really a problem, because you only protect what you love. And if you don't know anything about something, you can't love it. And so part of what I wanted to really do today is provide you with a bunch of reasons to love Papahānaumokuākea. And as we start to build a group of people that will get to know this place and feel attached to the place, feel a connection to it, the more people will want to protect it. And so we're pretty excited for the first time to be able to allow people to get involved through this nonprofit that we've created. Sorry, I'm just gonna quick change the view on Zoom here. Okay. Sorry about that. So I wanted to just show you guys a little bit about the amazingness that is Papahānaumokuākea, if you're not familiar with it already. It has some of the most incredible reefs in the United States. In fact, 70% of all coral reefs in the United States lie within Papahānaumokuākea. This area includes 10 uninhabited islands and atolls that stretch, for about 1,300 miles to the northwest of Honolulu. So it's a huge area, 585,000 square miles of protected area. And it's home to some of the most amazing wildlife in the world. For instance, this shot here is at French Frigate Shoals, or Lalo, as it's known, which supports 90% of all Hawaiian green sea turtle nesting. This is a photo here from Kuaheilani, which is Midway Atoll, and here you have sometimes up to 3 million nesting birds on a small island, the size of Kailua. When you get in the water, you have creatures visiting you like this. Monk seals will swim up to you and look you in the face. Seabirds will land on the water and come and investigate. They'll even land on your head to investigate. The wildlife is so unused to seeing humans here that it's like stepping back in time. It's a place where you can go and witness National Geographic stuff right off the beach here. This is a tiger shark eating an albatross fledgling. And where you have some of the most incredibly rare species in the whole world. This is the Laysan finch, which is endemic and found only in Papahānaumokuākea. In Papahānaumokuākea, we have 23 endangered species, thousands of species, of which hundreds are only found there. 1,400 Hawaiian monk seals are left on this earth, and 80% of them live within Papahānaumokuākea. It provides 2/3 of the humpback whale wintering grounds in all of Hawaii. And there are 14 million seabirds of 22 species that live here. And it has one of the last remaining intact predator regimes where you can get in the water and see 10 times more sharks than you would in the main Hawaiian Islands. So I wanted to, there's so much there to love, and I think it's really one of those things that it's one of those things that if you know about it, you love it, and if you don't, then you don't. And so we hope that everyone here will get to know Papahānaumokuākea a little bit more. But it's really not just the incredible landscape or the wildlife. It's also the fact that this place is very much connected to the Hawaiian culture. And so I'd like to play a short video for you now. Drew's going to cue that up to kind of put you in the place, to really like put your feet on the ground in Papahānaumokuākea. And it will also introduce Kalani, who's going to speak next.
There is an olelo no eo, a Hawaiian proverb, and it goes, Kui kale mokua kanaloa. And what that means simply in English is that the islands are strung together like a lei by the ocean. And even deeper than that, in a Hawaiian context, it means that the islands are strung together like a lei by Kanaloa, the ocean deity, our Hawaiian god. But if you look further into the meanings, that kauna, that deeper meaning, it means that humanity is united by the ocean. Humanity is united by the ocean.
I've always felt like that video is magical. And if there's one thing we can do to help people love this place, it's to transport them there. And I always felt like Kalani's words are mesmerizing. But I do want to kick this over to Kalani. He's been helping the collective collaborative marine debris project by advising us in so many ways over the last year. And so I wanted to introduce Kalani, and he's going to say a few words.
Aloha mai kako, aloha everyone. I think you can hear me. My video is coming over soon, and I will share my presentation with you all. I just have a few slides. I want to thank Papahānaumokuākea Marine Debris Project, aloha, I can see myself on the screen now. Aloha, Kevin. Aloha, colleagues. Aloha, everyone out there. Just really fortunate to be able to come here and share the really positive work and collaboration that we have with PMDP. And wanted to share some of our own updates as well. But really, oh, 1 second. It's quite an acrobatic feat to juggle all these things. I give you credit, Kevin. Let's see. Here we are. Should be full screen now. So as Kevin said, you know, just in introducing the film, this is the first time that we actually met around marine debris, which is funny, kind of talking about our origin story. But you know, doing this video really helped me in identifying why marine debris was an important Hawaiian issue, part of a larger conversation, larger efforts within our communities to aloha aina, to love land, to love people, to love everything that feeds, which is the grounding of that meaning for aina, everything that feeds. I also wanted to share that, you know, we've been trying to figure out how to incorporate culture into the marine debris, which can seem really challenging because what is the cultural practices associated with marine debris? But as I said, it really is at the heart of it, aloha aina, malama aina, the values that have been perpetuated in these lands, in these islands for generations. And at the root of, or at the center of trying to incorporate Hawaiian culture into this work has been incorporating Native Hawaiians, bringing in Native Hawaiian community members and allowing them to be a part of it in a way that's meaningful for them and in a way that they can contribute like nobody else can. And I think that's really important for all of us to acknowledge in our communities, the unique diversity that's present. Another really important aspect of this work has been acknowledging the cultural values, as I sort of mentioned, the perspectives and approaches that inform aloha aina. And at the root of that, I think this really helps us to address these relational issues that we have with the environment, which involves our relationships to marine debris and the sources of marine debris. And these kinds of collaborations, marine debris collaborations, have been the cornerstone of co-management for Papahānaumokuākea. And on June 15th of this year, the monument is celebrating 15 years of co-management. And we have a number of events that we are planning and we hope to share with you soon. One of those events, as part of these series of events for the anniversary celebrations, is this Hawaiian Oral Histories project that we're hoping to launch in June, probably in line with Merry Monarch, which has been rescheduled for later on this year in June. And this is a really, really exciting project. It started off as basic interviews to capture the historic genealogy of protections and community advocacy for Papahānaumokuākea. And these 8 individuals, these 8 Native Hawaiian community leaders, in their stories of how they've experienced these 2+ decades of collaboration and protections, they share these insights about Hawaiian values, including our philosophies that are deeply embedded in Hawaiian cosmology and worldview, and really gets at the reasons or the things that we hold on in the relationships that we have with place. As Kevin had said earlier, this is a special place. These stories are really important because this is how we're able to transport people to this place. This is how we're able to bring the place to the people. And this is how we're able to amplify the lived experiences of our community members that get to touch, experience, breathe, and live among Papahānaumokuākea, all that is Papahānaumokuākea. And so we're looking forward to this year of celebration, and this marine debris cruise is one of the first things that we're excited about as part of this string of events, right, that are connected by the ocean. So I just wanted to mahalo PMDP one more time for the opportunity to share, and I look forward to another successful marine debris cruise. Mahalo nui to you, Kevin, and your team. Aloha.
Thank you, Kalani. think that's a really important aspect. You know, you have this really incredible place, and can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you, Kevin. Yes.
Okay. You have this really incredible place. And when you visit it, you're so blown away by the landscape and the wildlife, just the nature. But that having gone up to Papahānaumokuākea so many times over the years, it became really clear, like, this is a place where you can't separate the nature and the culture. And so Kalani has been a wonderful guide in helping the Marine Debris Project sort of be an example for other maybe scientific projects that go up into Papahānaumokuākea, to be able to lead the way in terms of how we can integrate our work on the ground, cleaning up debris, but also engaging in those cultural activities, protocol that means so much when you're in a place like that and you're doing work in a place like that. So thank you, Kalani. And I would tune into anything that Kalani has in the future, any webinars. He's always a wonderful speaker to listen to. But on that note, I thought, you know, talking about Papahānaumokuākea, it's hard for people to relate to it sometimes because you can't actually visit it. And so that's the hard part for us in terms of rallying support to protect this place. And so I think it's always really important to connect like human experiences to the place. And so Drew's going to queue up another video here from Mahia Wilhelm, who was on our last cleanup crew. She came along and led us in protocol and just kicked butt, cleaned up a ton of stuff. But hearing her talk about experiencing Papahānaumokuākea for the first time, it's always a really amazing thing to go up there with people who are experiencing it for the first time. And so I wanted to let you all hear from her. Okay.
Hey, Kev. Unfortunately, Mahia's video is not coming through on the audio, so we're not going to be able to play that one.
Okay. No problem. All right. Let's see. All right. Apologies for the technological lag here. So, you know, the place is so incredible. For us, it's really about protecting a place. So why do we do this work? Why do we focus on cleaning up marine debris? And why not, you know, rallying for climate change or ocean acidification or things like that? And I feel like very strongly, like when you go up to a place like this and you do work on the ground and you're actually there and you're actually doing work, it's incredibly fulfilling. And marine debris is actually just about the only tangible problem that's facing Papahānaumokuākea today that we can actually do something about in the immediate time frame. And so this is why our work is so important. You have all that incredible landscape, all those incredible species, endangered species, species unique only to Hawaii, and yet you have this threat of marine debris that just keeps rolling in. So I kind of wanted to just go through the why, like, why do we do this work? And why are we heading up here in a couple days on the ship to go do another round of it? And this is why. And I think you've seen these images, and it definitely speaks for itself. But this is a beach at Laysan Island, and if you look closely there, you can see black-footed albatross, Laysan albatross, and Hawaiian monk seals all basking and nesting in amongst that stuff. So you've all seen this probably as well, the oceanographic map of the Pacific, but just to run over why we suffer this problem in Papahānaumokuākea is simply because of the ocean currents. This place can be an indicator for how bad the marine debris problem is across the world, because this is a place where there are no humans making this garbage. All of this trash has come from other places. And so it's exceptionally shocking when you get to a place like that where there isn't supposed to be anyone, and it's full of all this human generated trash. So essentially the northwestern Hawaiian islands here, you can't really see it, but it sits just below this convergence zone. And every couple of years, on El Nino years, that convergence zone gets pushed south. And along with it comes a lot of accumulated marine debris. And so 52 metric tons just of ghost nets, derelict fishing nets, accumulate on the reefs in Papahānaumokuākea every year. And that number is, as you can see, over 10 years old. That was that study that was conducted. So I can only imagine that number has likely gone up. And it doesn't even take into account any of the plastic trash that ends up on the shorelines. So we have a shocking amount of this stuff rolling into this incredibly protected area, and no one there to speak of to keep up with the problem. So here's another shot of a typical shoreline in Papahānaumokuākea. And you can see you got stuff from the fishing industry, you have consumer goods, plastic drinking bottles, shampoo bottles, toys, just about anything that you can think of that floats and is made of plastic, you can find it on one of these beaches. So we've found bowling balls, car bumpers, motorcycle helmets, golf clubs, soccer balls, baseballs, basketballs, floating docks, water heaters. It's an incredible scavenger hunt, really, and it's actually really pretty fun because you never know what you're going to find next. Messages in bottles, that kind of thing we found. But the sad reality is that there's just about anything you can think of out here so far from humans. This beach right here is 700 miles from the nearest city or town. And then obviously you have all this protected wildlife interacting with this stuff on the shoreline. This is a monk seal with its snout stuck in an eel cone, which usually starves them to death, prevents them from opening their mouth wide enough to forage and feed. When you have one of your 14 million seabird chicks here having to nest in and amongst the stuff. And not only that, being able to pick up chunks of plastic from around the nest area, but when you have your parents coming back from sea and feeding you more plastic, you have a pretty tough lot in life. And you can see there in the background, there's a monk seal. And beaches like this can also restrict basking activities of sea turtles and monk seals. And so it's all around just a pretty rotten thing. There's a Laysan albatross chick playing around with a lighter, and half the time those end up in their stomachs. And then you might have seen the famous pictures. This is the doom and gloom picture of a dead albatross chick, and after the carcass rots away, its stomach contents are left, and there's the famous shot there by Susan Middleton of a single albatross chick's stomach contents. So ingesting these plastics on the shoreline is a really big deal. And Yvonne from Fish and Wildlife here, we were going to show you a little video about albatross stomach contents, but weren't able to make that one work either. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Yvonne, and he can just say a few things about this issue.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Can everybody hear me? Hello? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Sounds good.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, this has been an ongoing issue, and ironically, it presents an opportunity for people to understand what the albatrosses are doing about their feeding habits. So for years, many years, the Fish and Wildlife Service has been collecting these boluses. Boluses are basically like thrown up by the chicks before they actually fly for the first time. They need to get rid of as much body weight as possible. So they release almost, it's like a giant owl pellet. It's undigestible material, basically. And it contains, squid beaks and other animal matter, but it also includes a lot of plastics. And we have a program called the Bolus program, where we actually ask for help from schools and teachers and other people, where we ship these boluses out for folks to actually help document the data associated with what plastics are being ingested by albatrosses. And we're talking about Laysan and black-footed albatrosses that are the the main two species of albatrosses that inhabit Papahānaumokuākea. But we collect them specifically from Midway Atoll, National Wildlife Refuge, and Battle of Midway. And and what we do is we collect them. We've been doing some of the surveying ourselves. We ship them out to hundreds of schools across the nation where kids get to actually be citizen scientists, helping dissect these boluses to document what plastics have been ingested. And over years, we will continue knowing what the trends are, what specific things are being fed to the albatrosses from year to year. So we'll have the ability to actually study trends on what's being ingested, what's being given to the chicks. Many of the chicks they actually survive after they throw up the bolus before taking flight. Some don't, but most actually are very resilient. The albatrosses are extremely resilient. Fortunately, most of them, the vast majority, actually make it. The ones that don't, unfortunately, we do have some percentages that do unfortunately perish with the ingestion of some plastics that just are detrimental to them. So we're able to actually also establish those trends. How many are surviving from year to year, how many are not because of plastics, etc. But the boluses that we ship out, they provide us with a lot of good input from classrooms. So we have a bolus program. If you're interested in obtaining some boluses, again, we're about to start shipping boluses again. And email us at bolusprogram@fws.gov. Again, bolusprogram@fws.gov. And we can send a few boluses for classrooms to actually dissect them, teachers and students involved, and get to really help sample what's happening out here. It is a privileged opportunity actually for folks who actually have this memento of a bolus and see what's happening in the Pacific. It's a special thing. It's a sad thing, but it's a special thing. There's a lot of unique things that you can find that are actually good from the contents of a bolus, from squid beaks and wood or seeds, fish parts, bones, and but also, unfortunately, there's fishing material, including line or netting, floats, like oyster spacers, plastic, from all kinds of plastic you can think of, including even toothbrushes and lighters. And so every year we rely on some of the classrooms in the nation, not just in Hawaii, but also in the mainland, so across the nation, to help us do this. So again, if you want to be part, play a very little part, that can be a big part of Papahānaumokuākea. Again, the bolus program, the way to contact for requesting boluses is bolusprogram@fws.gov.
Thank you, Ivan. Yeah, that's a really neat program, and you get to really experience it up close. If you're a student or a classroom interested in that, I'd definitely recommend it. All right. Switching back to some photos here.
Hey Kevin, this is Kalani Aloha. I just wanted to add that, Ivan, mahalo. We actually use the boluses at the Moku Papapa Discovery Center in Hilo, and it's a really important learning tool. So I just wanted to also kako and support that as well. Mahalo.
Oh, thanks, Kalani. That's a good point too, is that if anybody's in Hilo, there's an incredible discovery center all about Papahānaumokuākea there. So if you're planning a family trip, put it on your stop list. We've sent pallets of marine debris over there before to have some authentic Northwestern Hawaiian Island marine debris. Getting back to the why, so there's plastics, and those usually end up on the shorelines here. To give you an idea of the scale of the land area, there's 585,000 square miles within Papahānaumokuākea, And of that, only about 3,300 acres are actually land area. So we have very tiny islands. And so these shorelines are used heavily as habitat for birds, seals, turtles, vegetation, endemic plants, insects. And so there isn't that much shoreline area, but what little there is, it's very important that we remove these hazards. So obviously here you have a big bundle of line, a derelict fishing net, a ghost net, as you call it. And so these end up in two places. They end up on the shorelines, but they also end up on the reefs. And so it's kind of hard to imagine, there's another shot there. It's kind of hard to imagine how the reef is different in Papahānaumokuākea than it is down here in the main Hawaiian Islands. But picture Kaneohe Bay and the barrier reef and then the patch reefs that are inside the calm area of the bay. And that's what you have in Papahānaumokuākea, is lots of atolls with barrier reefs and then calm lagoons. So this is actually an aerial shot at Manavai, which is Pearl and Hermes Atoll. And it looks just like a patch reef at Kaneohe Bay. But these nets wash in from out at sea, from being lost or discarded, and end up washing into these very shallow, very thriving coral gardens. And you can see what kind of havoc that would wreak on the coral. This upcoming cleanup, we're focusing just on shoreline cleanups, but coming up this summer, we're conducting another big effort to focus just on reef cleanup. So just before I move on, here's a little known impact of main Hawaiian Islands, because the reef structure is for the most part different, but you get a big fishing net washing in and then snagging up on this coral. And what it does is it sort of just plasters itself over the reef. So this is a really nice thin one, but some of them are big and can weigh up to several tons. And when you get something like that just sitting on top of the reef, you have not a good situation. And so here's a shot of us peeling a net back off the reef, and you can see all the dead bleached white coral underneath. There's another shot here. There's a net it's kind of got a bunch of algae growing on it because it's been there a while, but once we peel it off, you can see the dead scar underneath and the live coral above and below that scar site. And then you have nets that wash in over the barrier reef through the surf, through all that surf action, where there are smaller coral heads growing. And you have these sorts of situations where you'll find a net like this just inside the surf, and when you pull it apart, it's full of coral heads that it's ripped off. So, so that, fishing nets end up in the water, they snag on the reef, but they also snag on the shorelines. And the take home really is that whether it's in the water or on the beach, rare and protected and very special animals are curious about them. So here's a endangered Hawaiian monk seal swimming up to a big ghost net floating in the water, and they like to play in them. This one was, I watched this one for quite a while, spend about 20 minutes tossing its head, trying to get this loop of line around its own neck, just playing, but could have dire consequences. And here's a net that we found at Manavai, Pearl and Hermes Atoll. And we came back in the morning after finding this net, and there was a Hawaiian monk seal hauled out basking on this net. This net was the biggest one we'd ever found, we'd ever encountered, and it weighed 11.5 tons. And it was so huge and buoyant that you could get out and walk around on it like an island. There we are kicking back, hanging out, eating lunch, and this thing stretched 30, 35 feet all the way to the bottom. We had to cut it into 3-4 pieces and tow it out to the ship through all that shallow coral reef area. Quite the beast. But obviously, sometimes it doesn't end well. There's a shot from a few years ago of Noah diver who was able to sort of stumble upon one of these entanglements that, for the most part, almost no one ever sees, I would imagine. And with only 1,400 of these seals left, every one matters. And in fact, a paper was published not too long ago that showed about 30% of all Hawaiian monk seals alive today were alive because of human intervention, which includes, and so I think it's having a huge unseen impact on these populations, green sea turtles as well, that we just don't see because it's so remote and so unpopulated. There's another shot of a green sea turtle that we happened to stumble across before it suffocated, and we were able to release it, which is always a nice experience. Some don't make it though. And then obviously you have other animals interacting with these nets, getting tangled up. It's not just the marine creatures that suffer from this stuff. So with knowing all that, and knowing that over 110,000 pounds of this stuff rolls into these pristine islands every year, we really want to try and figure out where it's coming from. And so that's where I'm going to kick it over to Drew, because Drew McWhorter at HPU is he's a master's student at the Center for Marine Debris Research, and he is focusing his entire master's project on trying to determine where these fishing nets are coming from, so that we can stop them before they get in the water. So go ahead and kick it over to Drew here. He can introduce his little video that he made showing some of his research.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Drew McWhorter. I'm with the Center for Marine Debris Research, and I'm really excited to share with you about my project. Most of the details about the project are in the video, so I'm going to go ahead and share that with you guys right now. My name is Drew McWhorter. I'm a master's student here at Hawaii Pacific University, Center for Marine Debris Research, and I'm really excited to be a part of this Papahānaumokuākea marine debris mission, and I'm excited to share with you what we have going on the research side to try to figure out where these nets are actually coming from, okay? So my team and I, over the last year, we've been working on a huge project, and we are trying to source ghost nets back to the fishery that they came from. Another word for ghost nets is derelict fishing gear, meaning fishing gear, typically commercial fishing gear, that has been lost, abandoned, or discarded intentionally at sea. And there are hundreds of thousands of pounds of derelict fishing gear currently circulating in the North Pacific Ocean alone. And unfortunately, because of the way that Hawaii is geographically positioned in relation to our oceanographic currents here, we are getting a lot of debris accumulation all year round. That is in the main Hawaiian Islands and in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, the monument of Papahānaumokuākea. All right, so I'm gonna give you a little tour of my office, my second home. I'm currently standing at the net shed on HPU's campus, and this is where we do our initial processing of derelict fishing gear once we get a net from our cleanups or local partners. So welcome to the net shed. Every net that you see here has been collected by either one of our cleanup partners or brought in from the Hawaii Longline Association tuna fishing grounds. And this is where we do all of our disentanglements of the nets, and then we cut samples out of them to bring back to the lab. Now the crazy thing is we, on Oahu alone, have collected over 36 nets in just the past year. And we also have partnered with the Hawaii Longline Association, the tuna fishery here based on Oahu, and they have also brought us over 18 nets from their fishing grounds, which is in the North Pacific Gyre, closer to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. We are also planning to bring back nets from Papahānaumokuākea, and we're really excited to be able to compare the composition of the derelict fishing gear that we're finding in all three regions to see if we're finding the same type of derelict fishing gear in each region, or if we're seeing differences in the composition of debris that we're finding in each area. All right, the other crazy thing is that each one of these nets that we're finding, each one of these big net balls, is composed of so many different types of actual individual nets. And a single net could have over 100 types of net entangled together. And they're not always entangled intentionally. We don't really know exactly how they're getting entangled. Some of it's probably happening out in the open ocean. Some of it might be happening before it gets discarded into the ocean. But this is where we basically are processing the nets, and then we are taking samples to the lab to do further analysis, where we're actually able to identify the polymer composition of each type of plastic that each fishing gear is composed of, all right? So this one in the back here, that's a FAD raft. That is meaning it's a fish aggregation device. And then we have just a bunch of different net bundles all around. You can see in the back corners here, we've sorted some of the nets we've collected. So these are just a massive pile of green nets that we disentangled and a massive pile of gray nets that we disentangled. Now, from the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, we're planning to bring back at least 3 nets for our research, but we will be bringing back up to 10 nets to analyze and then source back to the fishery that it came from. So I hope you guys enjoyed the tour of the net shed. If you are interested in helping me out, I am absolutely in need of your help. My team would love to have more participation when we return from the cruise. So if you want to get involved and volunteer and help me to actually sample these nets in the net shed post-mission, I would love to have your help. Please reach out to me and we can get you in here, and we can definitely have a lot of fun and learn a lot from the type of marine debris that we're finding up in the monument. Thanks again so much, and I look forward to share some updates from the field with you guys, and thanks for following on our mission, and thank you for keeping plastic out of our ocean. All right, mahalo. All right, thank you, everybody. We're really hoping that by linking that connection there, we can help to prevent so much plastic from getting into the ocean and help us fund the cleanup efforts as well from those that we're tracing the nets back to.
That's a really huge component, Drew, and I'm really excited you guys are working on it, because it's something that those of us in the marine debris community have wanted to, crack that code for years. Like, where's it coming from? So the deck of the ship is going to start to look a lot like that net shed, and on any given project like this that we're about to embark on, we will come back with anywhere between 75 and 100,000 pounds of debris. So yeah, thanks, Drew. Really appreciate it. All right, going back to the photos here. So derelict fishing gear, it's a big problem. As you know, it's just a huge problem up here. And probably the problem that causes the most mortality or death for green sea turtles and monk seals with regards to marine debris. So let me move on here. All right. So, all right, so that's the problem, right? We got this incredible place. So here's a photo of an aerial shot of the lagoon at Manavai, which is, I think, the second biggest atoll in Papahānaumokuākea. And this lagoon stretches for miles and miles. I think it's 10 miles across. And you have all this habitat just catching marine debris. So just wanted to talk to you about how. So it's all done by people. So here's a shot of our field team. On the call today, we have a couple of us in here, but this is the team that's going to make it happen over the next month. And I'm gonna go through with you guys how we're going to get there, which islands we're going to visit, and what we're going to do real quick before we wrap it up. So it all happens with people. People make it happen. So this is the map that I neglected to show you in the beginning, I think. But as you can see, it's a huge area. And so if you go all the way from Kauai all the way up to Polaniku, which is Kure Atoll, all the way up at the very end, you're looking at over 1,300 miles. And so it's huge. And so we can't just hop in a Boston whaler and go up there and clean stuff up. And that's why it's so difficult and so expensive, is because we actually have to take a ship. So when we leave on Tuesday, we're going to hop on board this ship here. This is the merchant vessel Imua, and it's based locally. And it's usually chartered by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to resupply its field station on Midway Atoll. But we're going to charter this for this particular trip. And many thanks to NOAA, as well as the Fish and Wildlife Service, for footing the bill for this charter vessel for our collaborative project. So Drew's going to queue up another video. The captain of the vessel, Captain Hans, is going to say a few words, but this is our ride up to Papahānaumokuākea.
Coming to you from Anchorage Bravo off the south side of Oahu, my name is Hans and I am the captain of the MV Imua. The Imua is 180 feet long and 50 feet wide. It has a capacity of 700 metric tons, which equals 1,400,000 pounds. We're going to be the mothership for this upcoming Northwest Hawaiian Island marine debris cleanup. It's always a fun trip and it's very rewarding to get to clean up the oceans. We have 2 cranes and an A-frame to facilitate the launching of boats and the pickup of the trash out of the small boats. You can see it's basically a big deck. It's kind of like a floating pickup truck, and you can put all kinds of stuff on there. This is Captain Hans and the crew of the Imua signing off. Remember, please do your part and help keep our oceans clean. Thank you. Yeah.
So these are the guys that are going to run the ship for us and take us up there and drive us around and let us do our thing. So it's a great crew. It's a great vessel for cleaning up debris. I mean, you could see the size of that deck, just enormous. And so we're not going to run out of space or carrying capacity. So we're going to be able to clean up as much as we can possibly clean up. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. So there she is. So in this photo, you can see along the side a small black boat. And so, you know, we might steam for a couple days on the ship to get to our first location. And then when we get there, we're actually going to launch these smaller boats over the side with the crane. And so we're going to be bringing a fleet of 3 small boats that are 17 to 19 feet in length. These are owned by NOAA Fisheries, and they're kindly loaning them to this project, along with 3 of our crew, to be able to drive these boats. And so these things are awesome. Twin engines in case one dies and you're in a remote spot. Carrying capacity of just about as much as you can pile on, because they're inflatable. They can carry a ton of weight and a really shallow draft, so we can skim over those really shallow reef areas, which is so important for working in Papahānaumokuākea. Here's another shot of them loaded up with derelict fishing net. This is at Midway Atoll. So I'm just going to walk you guys through where we're headed. So we're leaving on Tuesday. All 12 of us are going to pile on board, and we're going to head out, which is 4 days away. So we're just going to be motoring for 4 days on the ship before we get here. Here's another view of Laysan Island. This is an area that we call the desert. So Kauo has an incredible amount of shoreline area, and this beach here on the north side of the island can be up to ½ a kilometer wide. And so this is the place where we could spend probably almost all of our time, because it contains a ton of debris. It takes about a couple hours to walk around the perimeter. It's about 7 miles around the perimeter, and it has a really neat saline lake in the middle. which is pretty cool. This shot that I showed you before is from Laysan, from Kauo. After that, we're going to head overnight to Kapo, which is also known as Lisiansky Island. This one's a little bit smaller, and it's not an atoll, it's just an island smack in the middle of the open ocean. So this one takes a couple days. We'll spend about 3 days here cleaning up these shorelines, making sure everything there has a good habitat for nesting and basking. Then from there, we're going to head up to Kuaheilani, which is Midway Atoll, which is the one spot in Papahānaumokuākea that has some real human infrastructure. Fish and Wildlife Service has a research station up there, and there's a runway there that's maintained for emergency landings for trans-Pacific flights. We'll stop in there for just 1 day and clean up those 2 little islands to the right, which are Eastern Island and Spit Island. And after that, we're going to head up to Holaniku, which is Kure Atoll. And Kure Atoll only has 1 major island. There's another small one down here at the bottom that you can't really see, but 1 major island called Green Island. And it's a really beautiful place. And on the line right now, we have Matt Saunter and Michelle Smith, who have spent a lot of time up here in Papahānaumokuākea. And I thought I would kick it over to them really quick to just tell you, real quick, 30 seconds to a minute about their experience up here in Papahānaumokuākea and what they did up there for so many years. Matt, you want to start first?
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Matt Saunter, and I've been conducting work in Papahānaumokuākea for the last 10 years for the state of Hawaii Department of Land and Natural Resources at Kure Atoll, which was at the end of the northwestern Hawaiian island chain. So I went to Kure for the first time in 2010 as a biological technician. And shortly after that, I began leading field camps out to the island, which would consist of 4 to 8 people for 6 months out of every year. So half the year I would spend on island and half the year I'd spend back in Honolulu. And our primary mission out there is to conduct habitat restoration. And in a few words, I would say Papahānaumokuākea is just an incredibly magical and dynamic place. And even after 10 years of visiting it, I'm still completely enraptured by it. And I'm so overjoyed every time I get to go out there. It's really a special place. And it's so exciting to be surrounded by such an abundance and variety of wildlife that call these places home. So I think the main takeaway, though, is even though this place is amazing and beautiful and scenic, and visitation is limited, they still really need our help. And they need our help to remove hazardous marine debris, to control and ideally remove invasive species, and to do our best to lessen the impacts caused by climate change. So I think once you know about these threats, it's pretty hard to ignore, and I think that's why I'm still involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Matt's taking a break from the state, and he's joining us through PMDP for this project. So he'll be along part of the field crew. We're stoked to have him. And then also coming along on this crew for the state of Hawaii is Michelle Smith. And I believe she's still here. Michelle, do you have good internet still? Oh, we might have lost her. She, I guess I should say that all of us who are heading out on the ship are quarantining right now for 2 weeks before we head out. And so some of us are not in our usual homes. And I know that Michelle and company were having internet trouble where they're quarantining. So anyway, maybe we'll get to talk to her on another event. All right, we're going to wrap it up here. I know we're going a little bit over time. And we'll get to questions very soon. I just had a couple more slides here. So after we stop at Kure Atoll, we're going to drop a couple people off there to actually begin their camp season, which is a really neat job. If any of you are interested in field work up in Papahānaumokuākea, getting to camp out for months at a time on one of these places really allows you to get to know it, and it's just an incredible experience. And so those jobs are available through the state of Hawaii and through NOAA Fisheries. So keep an eye open for those. After there, we're gonna obviously hit Manawai, spend 3 days there. Here's an aerial photo of Manawai. You can see the calm lagoon with all the crazy shallow reef in it where all the nets get snagged up. There's another drone shot of the lagoon at Manawai. Just ripe habitat for snagging nets. There's a small island, North Island at Manawai. It has a handful of small islands scattered around the perimeter that we're gonna spend our time cleaning up. And lastly, we'll make a quick stop at Lalo, which is French Frigate Shoals, which was actually the focus of our last cleanup that went out in October. And this is actually the closest to Honolulu. It's about 500 miles or so from Honolulu. And so it's one of the closer destinations within Papahānaumokuākea. But here we are at the end, after the end of 10 days of cleanup at Lalo, 82,000 pounds that we pulled off Lalo. So that was a very successful project. So what are we gonna do? All these places, we're gonna survey the shorelines and pull up plastics and nets. And that's basically all you need to know. Between the water and the vegetation line, we're gonna clean up everything we can find larger than your hand. We have a study going on to try and figure out how much plastic is accumulating on the shorelines. Because we had that study from a couple of years ago that showed how many nets were washing up on the reefs, but we don't know what volume and weight of plastic is actually washing up onto the shoreline habitat. So for a couple of years, we've had a study going on where we've divided all the shorelines up into 300-meter segments and surveyed each segment, bagged the debris, weighed it, and tallied it. So here's an example of Lisiansky and how we separated the shoreline up into segments to keep track of the data. And this is what we find. Just hundreds of thousands of individual debris items, bottle caps, lighters, shoes, laundry baskets, fishing floats, cigarette lighters, toothbrushes, surprisingly, oyster spacers, stuff involved with aquaculture and fish traps, and fishing floats. And then obviously throw all the ghost nets on top of that, and you kind of get a picture of what we're dealing with out there. We like to tally everything up so we can take data. And if you're interested in this, I can send you some of these tallies, which are pretty shocking in terms of the number of items, short cleanups and small islands. Consolidated on the shoreline and loaded into the boat. And then we'll make runs back and forth to the ship and load everything onto the ship and then head for home. And that's kind of how the deal goes. Day after day, we'll launch the boats, head to our work area, conduct the cleanups, load the boats, make runs out to the ship, and load up the ship. And so I'm gonna breeze through this sneak peek summer 2021 reef cleanup project, but just because we're running out of time, but we're gonna focus our efforts this summer on taking the derelict nets off the reefs. So I'm just gonna sneak through that one. There's some historical shots of results of historical cleanups. And you can see the volume of this stuff is pretty off the charts. Just gonna kind of cycle through. This isn't even nearly all of them, but just a handful of photos of past cleanups. You can see some of us on the call today in that boat right there. And so when we get back to Honolulu, we have a partnership with Covanta Energy and Schnitzer Steel, and all of the major stuff is actually ground up and then incinerated to generate electricity for the power grid on Oahu. And just as a last little slide, we have a fun little initiative we're working on locally, PMDP. We've secured some grants, and we are building a ocean plastics recycling space for Windward High School students to be able to take these ocean plastics and design their own products and then melt and mold these products. And so this has been in the works for a couple months, and we've built these open source machines, and we've been testing and troubleshooting them with the goal of being able to, on a small scale at least, turn some of these plastics into useful things that can then be recycled again, and have kids involved in the process along the way. So I think some of the students in this particular group of these photos here are probably tuning in today. So thanks, guys, for your hard work on these projects. And that's it. So I want to have Ali chime in really quick here about how to follow along. So we're leaving on Tuesday, and we're going to be coming back on the 22nd of April for this field mission. And so you can follow us. Ali, I'm going to leave this slide.
Yep, thanks, Kevin. So I threw this in the chat as well for you guys to check out. If you go to our website, pmdphawaii.org, you'll see a tab that says Follow the Journey, and there's a story map there at the top of the page where you can actually see all of the different islands and atolls that Kevin mentioned during the talk. And this will be populated with live updates from the field. So Kevin essentially sends me some photos and text via an inReach GPS unit. And those updates will go into that story map. So if you guys are interested and kind of want to see how things are progressing, please tune in over the course of the mission. And then also we'll have updates on social media through Instagram and Facebook at PMDP Hawaii on both of those. So yeah, please do follow along.
Yeah, thank you, Ali. So Ali will be running a team of 3 on our end that is working on creating some really awesome content for you guys during the mission. So this is especially geared towards teachers and classrooms. And so if you are a teacher listening in, please check it out. Okay. Just one last slide. That's it for me. And then I know we ran over time, but we got a little time for questions as long as our expert panel can hang on the line. I wanted to say thank you to all our project partners, which includes NOAA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the State of Hawaii, Department of Land and Natural Resources, Hawaii Pacific University, Kure Atoll Conservancy, and many others. And thanks to all of you who have contributed donations to PMDP to help make this work happen. It's all because of you. So thank you very much. All right.
Thanks, Kevin. We did have quite a few questions come into the chat. If you want me to get started with a few of those.
Yeah, sure.
One thing that came up quite a few times was whether this was being recorded, and I said that it was, but I wasn't sure how we were going to share that with people that may have missed it and want to watch it at a later time.
Yeah, this will be a YouTube video after it's done, and so it'll be available on our PMDP YouTube channel. It'll be the first video on our PMDP YouTube channel, so you should be able to find it there.
Great.
After the fact. So yeah, if you know anyone in the educational community, obviously it was a bad time this afternoon to have students tune in live, but anyone in the educational community who might benefit from showing this or a portion of it, it's available on YouTube. So
great, thank you. And so yeah, we had some very specific questions about types of marine debris. Someone asked, are you cleaning microplastics or only focusing on meso and megaplastics?
That's a great question. Just because it's so expensive and so difficult to get up to these islands, we can't really focus on anything too small or will be. So our theory is that larger plastics eventually become microplastics, and so cleaning up those prevents them from breaking down into smaller pieces that are then more easily eaten by an animal or a bird. So unfortunately, no. We just focus on the big stuff because it's all we can do, really, realistically.
Yep, that makes sense. We also had a question come in about animal rescues. How often are animal rescues done during a given cleanup mission?
Oh, that's a great question. Actually, can everyone in the panel here turn their video on? That's a great question. So, a given cleanup on any given year will last between, 3 weeks and a month and a half. And so we don't really have a great window of time there. We're not there long enough to probably witness many of the entanglements that happen. I would say on average, we're able to find and disentangle and release, 1 to 2 turtles on each mission, at least those that are done in the water on the reef. But maybe Matt, you could chime in on what you've seen having camped on these islands for so long in terms of that.
Sure, yeah, I would say from my experience on Cure, we would have maybe 1 disentanglement for monk seals every year. But I think you need to keep in mind the majority of the work we do is terrestrial. So it's pretty happenstance that we would even be able to detect an entangled animal offshore. So I would say, for every animal that we find that's disentangled, there's probably more that we don't even know about. But I'd say for monk seals, probably 1 or 2 a year on average.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. These places are so huge and the reef areas are so enormous that there could be a seal several miles from the nearest island where there may be any humans, and no one would ever find it. And so I feel like we probably have many of these entanglements and mortalities go unwitnessed. But the more we clean up, the less likely they are to be entangled. So
yeah, we actually, just a couple years ago, we had a recently weaned pup wash up on the beach, and it had obviously been entangled on the reef and had drowned out in the water, and we would have never known about it until the debris had broken free from the reef. But when she washed up, she still had the entanglement around her neck. So it's happening even though we aren't able to see it.
Yeah, and I would even add too, one thing that's been so apparent to me collecting nets from all these different areas and from all these different partners is that every net has its own distinct story behind it, right? And I can say that there's probably a lot less known about the nets, or there's not that much known about the nets stories up in the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands, because oftentimes we just see it at the end of its story, but we can find some evidence to what their story was by, one, if we find animals entangled or find bones entangled in the nets, like turtle bones is common. And then also one of the most interesting nets we have at the net shed right now actually did come from the Cure Atoll camps, and it's full of probably over 50 pounds of dead coral heads, and it actually had a monk seal entangled in it. That's why they ended up removing it from the reef. So we're excited to have that one to put into our research study.
Great, thanks for adding that, Drew. That kind of brings up another question that came up was, what is the craziest debris item removed from the monument? I know you guys find some pretty interesting things. So someone was asking about that.
I think the most surprising one, remember in my slides, I had that photo of the 11-ton net that the monk seal was hauled out on. We spent a day or two just cutting that huge net into pieces underwater. And I remember cutting through that net, through a giant massive net, and getting down into the very heart of it, making a cut and spreading the net apart, and staring me in the face was a stuffed animal of a Pokemon. And it just somehow found its way right into the very middle of the biggest net we've ever found. This goes to show you that all this stuff is all floating out around there together, mixing up and getting tangled with each other. So
that's a pretty good one. We also had a question about how much time you spend on each island and whether scouting is done beforehand, kind of to know what to expect, or if it's all just a big surprise.
Yeah, on a normal year when there's no COVID-19, there are field camps up on most of these islands for most of the summer. And so we've been working closely with the field camps to sometimes even collect and bag debris for us and have it waiting when we come, or if not, just to give us an intel about where there might be a big net that's a big threat to a seal pup or whatever it might be. And so in that sense, yeah, we do. But due to COVID, we haven't had anybody up there for over a year now on these islands doing any intel. So I'm thinking that when we get up there this time, it's going to be pretty dirty.
Yeah, and on that note, as the field team heads up there, are there certain tools that you guys use that you found to be pretty much essential to your mission? Someone was asking, Richard was asking about that, and if there were some items that were surprisingly useful.
Like debris items that we could put to use later?
I think he meant tools for cleaning marine debris.
Oh, gotcha. There's no magic bullet near as we have found. It's just muscle and human power and dragging and cutting. You know, we do a lot of manual cutting with knives. And actually, I just learned about a new technique from Matt. And the folks at Kure use tree loppers sometimes to cut through particularly thick sections. So we bring in a couple of those this time. We're going to give it a go. It's one of our priorities actually to try and do some innovation and try and figure out if there's new tools or methods or techniques that could make this more efficient. Shoreline cleanups are pretty straightforward, but sometimes we get dead-ended by a big net. It's too big to fit in the boat without cutting it in pieces. And you can spend hours cutting a big net ball in half, as Drew probably knows. It takes a long time to work with these things. And then in the water, the same thing, but you're having to do it while holding your breath, free diving. So you get dead-ended on a big net, you need to cut, and it really grinds your efficiency to a halt. You know, and when every day up there costs, you know, really all told probably between $20,000 and $30,000, you can't waste much time. So we really want to try and test new ways of cutting nets, test new ways of lifting nets into the boat. Sometimes it's very hard lifting a net that weighs a ton into the boat with just human power and lines and ropes. So we actually got some grant money from one of our other partners, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, to buy some materials and do some R&D and try and figure out some new tips and tricks for making this easier, because it's not easy. Anybody else have any magic tools? Matt, what do you guys do?
Most recently, we brought a piece of equipment out for another project, and it's essentially a tracked gas-powered wheelbarrow, and since it's on tracks, it operates really, really well on the sand, and it has a 1,000-pound capacity, and it has hydraulics, so it can like dump loads and stuff, and that's been pretty huge for moving around really awkward and heavy things on shore. But as far as in the water, I mean, the only thing we've ever used are like come-alongs, which are basically wenches. And you can slowly get a big net ball past that tipping point over the edge of a boat with the use of come-alongs if you're careful. And I mean, it's so hard on your back, you know, finding these ways to handle the immense weight is really important, because inevitably someone's gonna get hurt. So that's kind of what we got.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's very physically demanding, removing a lot of this marine debris. I think that's pretty much all the questions that we had. And I just wanted to say thank you to Kevin for sharing all of the information about the upcoming mission, and also to all of our panelists for just imparting you know, information about the research that's going on and about the cultural aspects. We really appreciate you guys taking the time, and hopefully everybody, oh yeah, go ahead, Matt. Feel free to add something.
Sorry, I wanted to go back to disentanglements really quick. I guess we kind of forgot about the seabirds. So we do disentangle a lot of seabirds throughout the year. I mean, that would be the majority of the interventions. And part of that is because, for one, albatross chicks, if they get like thin lines in their nest bowl, they tend to pivot inside of their nest bowl, and eventually it'll wrap around their legs and they'll become entangled. It's pretty easy to do. So that's common. And yeah, a lot of times they'll get stuck in it awkwardly because they have large awkward wings. And yeah, I'd say majority of the time it's disentangling a seabird rather than a marine animal. It's pretty common, actually. Oh, also, sorry. We'll see them with hooks in their mouths. So because of the fishing industry, the longlining industry, you'll see birds that are still alive and able to move around, but they'll have a big hook lodged in their throat, a line trailing out, and really the best thing you can do is at least shorten that line so they're not like stepping on it. But it's really hard to see that.
Yeah, you guys probably see a lot more birds being there for so long. We've definitely encountered a couple. Sometimes they'll ingest a monofilament that we found, and they'll have something hanging out of their bill, and you carefully pull it out so it doesn't impact them anymore. But yeah. Well, if there's no more questions, thank you very much. Thanks to Jenna and Drew and Ali for troubleshooting the whole YouTube live streaming with us. Really appreciate it. And thanks to the panelists. Kalani had to head to another meeting early, but wanted to say thanks to him as well, and to all the project partners who put in a ton of planning to make these cleanups happen. So thanks everybody, and hope you enjoyed it. And you can always reach out and contact us via the website www.pmdphawaii.org. So thanks.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Aloha.
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 Thank you, Kevin, for an awesome presentation, Kevin. Thank you. And everybody else. Looking forward to working on this project.
Yeah, I'm stoked. Let's go do it.